Morning, everyone. I've been hearing this rumor for the past couple of days. My dad mentioned that the Conservatives sent out a mailer saying Trudeau's going to call an early election. And then I saw this headline and a couple other people just randomly across Twitter and stuff, said people saying early election. So I don't know, but here's the Suburban, Quebec's largest English weekly newspaper, reporting. They say, quote, Trudeau likely to call early May federal election. Is Justin Trudeau really relaxing in Florida this week to recharge his batteries and forget about SNC-Lavalin? Or is he getting ready to hit the road for a re-election campaign? Several good sources told me Trudeau will soon pull the trigger on an early May election. It makes a lot of sense. He cannot have this story follow him for the next 6 months. So after his party tables a good news budget, he will tell Canadians he did the right thing by asking Jody Wilson-Raybould, the Minister of Justice and Attorney General at the time, to intervene in an ongoing criminal prosecution case against SNC-Lavalin. He wanted to save jobs, and if the opposition has a problem with that, he will let the people decide. Several suppliers who are called upon by candidates in federal elections have told me they've been contacted already to be prepared to start printing material for a May vote. This would catch the opposition off guard. The Tories do not have all of their candidates, plus Maxime Bernier is set to split the vote in different ridings. The NDP, RMS, and the Bloc Québécois are just getting to know their new leader. Trudeau will dump the disloyal Wilson-Raybould and Jane Philpott. The Tories would be wise to recruit them. It is a calculated gamble, but one that could give Trudeau another 4 years in office, says the Suburban. So I find that interesting, especially when the polls are consistently putting the Conservatives ahead nationally. I mean, not to say that 3 points is a big, or 2.5, I guess, points is a big spread. I've seen bigger spreads. I've seen the Conservatives as high as 40. But I think that when this election breaks open, a lot more people will be paying attention, and who knows where it'll shift to, right? Like when during the 2011 election, people flocked behind certain, in Quebec, the NDP, giving them official opposition status, right? And 2015, we saw what happened with Trudeau, but I mean, he hasn't delivered on a lot of his premier promises, so I don't know that the people will believe him now. I don't know if it's a good gamble or not. I think he's in win territory in Ontario, and I don't think that's a good thing for him. And as far as Quebec goes, I've seen the polls. I think Quebec is the Liberals pretty high, but I've heard that the Conservatives are gaining. And again, when this election really breaks open, who knows what's going to happen, right? All right, so federal watchdog unable to reliably estimate the scope of Canada's money laundering problem. Report. This is the Globe and Mail reporting. It's an annotation piece published on the 13th yesterday. It says, quote, Canada has no idea how much dirty money local gangsters, violent drug cartels, and sophisticated transnational gambling networks are washing within its borders every year, according to a confidential draft research paper from the country's money laundering watchdog. The report, titled Estimating Scale of Money Laundering in Canada, prepared by the Financial Transactions and Reports Analysis Centre of Canada, FINTRAC, set out to identify the best ways of defining the contours of the problem. Ultimately, the report could not settle on a single solution, with estimates ranging from $5 billion to $40 billion. It's very troubling, according to experts, because as long as the federal government is without running estimates for how much is being laundered, it won't know how effectively authorities are at stopping this sophisticated crime. Yeah, the draft research brief was created sometime between January 2015 and May 2016 and released through Freedom of Information laws to Ottawa-based researcher Ken Rubin, who recently shared it with the Globe and Mail. And I scroll down. FINTRAC spokeswoman Renee Bercier said this week that the reference material was never published because all of the information in it was taken from publicly available information. As for the agency's current estimate of how much is being laundered, she referred to the Globe to the Department of Finance's 2015 National Risk Assessment that stated criminal activity across the country, quote, generates billions of dollars in proceeds of crime annually that might be laundered. She added, quote, it is important to remember that money laundering is a clandestine activity for which it is difficult, if not impossible, to provide a reliable estimate. I scroll down again. Over the past year, the extent of money laundering in BC's casino and real estate sectors has come into focus and caused public outrage as details emerge about the specific cases. In February 2018, a Globe investigation uncovered how 17 underground leaders had claimed a $47 million stake in 36 Vancouver area properties, allowing people connected to the transnational fentanyl trade to park their illicit gains in the real estate market. Last year, BC Attorney General David Eby appointed former Deputy Commissioner of the RCMP, Peter German, to examine the role of money laundering in BC's casinos. Mr. German's Dirty Money report, published last summer, concluded that using a, quote, very conservative estimate, $100 million a year was being washed through these establishments. Mr. German's next report, due by the end of this month, examines whether BC's real estate market is being used to launder millions. A July 2018 case study by the Group of Seven led Financial Action Task Force alleged an unregistered currency exchange in Richmond, BC was part of an underground banking network laundering more than $1 billion a year in illicit drugs and gambling money. Yeah, it's called the Vancouver method, and Canada's famous for it because they bring in drug money, sell the drugs, wash the money in casinos, park the money in real estate, or send it back to China to pay for more drugs, to be repeating the whole process. They're making billions off of us, and we are running away from properties that are being artificially inflated to park ill-gotten triad gains. It's incredible what has happened to our once rule of law country. We don't have that anymore, and who knows exactly when we lost it, but Trudeau is no guardian of it. The Star is reporting, Trudeau to keep Wernick on election interference file despite opposition misgivings. Do you remember Mr. Wernick? The absolutely tinfoil hat wearing, conspiracy theory touting testimony to the Justice Committee. Mr. Wernick, him? He was crazy, absolutely crazy, almost incoherent crazy at his testimony. And here he tries to, he doesn't back down. He says, yes, foreign interference, it's the Russians. You know what, Mr. Wernick? I don't believe you. I think your government has been paid off by the Chinese, right? Not the Russians. Anyway, here's the Toronto Star. The Liberal government will keep the country's top bureaucrat as the person ultimately responsible for alerting Canadians to foreign interference in the 2019 election, despite the opposition party's lost confidence in Michael Wernick's neutrality. There's nobody who could watch his testimony and believe that he was neutral or nonpartisan. It was awful. Crazy. Okay, I scroll down. In 2 committee appearances over 2 weeks, Wernick repeatedly stressed that he has the highest security clearance in Canada, and he is extremely concerned about foreign intervention in the upcoming federal election. He has been criticized by opposition MPs as well as academics for making the claim that he fears a politician will be assassinated on the campaign trail. Wernick was before the committee to testify on the SNC-Lavalin affair that has embroiled the Liberal government for months, not on electoral interference or potential assassinations. Yeah, so he went off on this crazy conspiracy theory. It had nothing to do with SNC-Lavalin. What's the question? Oh, the question I want to answer is assassinations. Crazy, Mr. Wernick. Okay, I scroll down back to the article. If the committee jointly determines that the threshold of needing to report that interference by a foreign country has happened, threshold had been met, the clerk would direct either CSE or CSIS to hold a news conference to alert the Canadian public. But the question is now whether or not political parties and Canadian voters will see the warning as legitimate, given opposition's assertion that Wernick is politically compromised. I scroll down again. Canada's election system, which is low-tech and leaves a paper trail, is considered less vulnerable to cyber attacks than some purely electronic voting systems in certain U.S. states. Wernick has declined repeatedly interview requests from the Star, most recently on Saturday. So I find it interesting that this very partisan person is in charge of the interference file on elections. And if he raised the alarm, I have to tell you, I would question I would question it. I wouldn't believe it right away. I would need a lot of evidence, and even then I would question the evidence. So yeah, he has lost his credibility. That is the unfortunate truth. When you appear before the Justice Committee and are asked specific questions, you can't answer those questions, and you go off on a crazy tangent talking about assassinations. Come on, sir. Right? You hold a very high security clearance, right? The highest in Canada. So maybe you shouldn't be going crazy in the Justice Committee testimony. Maybe you should answer the question you're asked. It's quite simple, really. Usually how conversation works. I'm so sick of this government. I hope it's a May election just a little bit so we can get rid of this and all of these people as quickly as possible. It is just an abomination. It is offensive to Canadians that these people are sitting there and pretending that they're working for Canadians. They clearly are not. They're working to enrich them and their crony buddies. And I'm just ready to see them go. See the back of them. Bye. Okay, so thank you very much for watching. Check out thepeoplespartyofcanada.ca and have a wonderful day.